In 1798, the famous Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Egypt, and, according to legend, he would have said: Soldats, songez que du haut de ces pyramides, 40 siècles d'histoire vous contemplent. Ancient Egypt was, well, ancient. In fact, Cleopatra was born closer to the invention of your computer than the building of the Great Pyramids. Finding the origins of this civilization is a very complex task. But before imposing the materialistic and skeptical view of our glorious time, let's try to imagine what a priest of the New Kingdom would have answered. He would probably claim it that in the beginning, Egypt was ruled by a dynasty of gods. First Ra, then Shu, Geb, Osiris, Set, Horus, Tot, Maat. And one day they simply left a half-human, half-god as the new king. And to our surprise, it would stop there. No comment regarding why the gods live, or the fact that this story seems to be centuries old, but he claims that the king at the end is the same, that the one sitting on the throne. Time seems to have passed, but basically nothing had changed. Was he crazy? Ignorant? To the 21st century? Maybe. But for him, it was only basic logic. And we can understand him. But for that, we must go back to a time when history was only a dream. In the beginning, there was only none, an ocean without end or order. And then, after billions of years, an island appeared, and land began to take form. The sea gradually recedes, leaving the Nile to cross the valleys. To the south, the Nile ran through an arid desert that one day would be known as the land of the people of Kush. And in the north, where the waters of the river join those of the sea, we find the Delta, a marshy region, home to many dangerous animals, but also the source of the vertebra of Egyptian culture, papyrus. Finally, around this African oasis, desert took place to the east and west, Celtic lands that the Egyptians will call the Red Lands, the domain of Set. Who were the first inhabitants of Nile Valley? None can tell. But it seems that the Egyptian population was quite mixed between 46,000 BC and 4000 BC. Nomadic tribes came from north, south and west, and apparently integrated without much violence with the local population over the centuries. The Nile is a rich source of food. However, to be able to enjoy, it takes a lot of organization and teamwork. This encouraged the creation of hierarchical communities. Small clay houses got bigger and more comfortable, and the discovery of tools and ceramics helped humanity impose its will on the wilderness. Religion also begins to take shape. Historians have found a tomb of a hunter with his bow and arrow, which apparently would be useful in another life. Death is no longer an end, but a transition. For the ancient Egyptians, the world was ruled by ancestral powers, each with their own will and nature. They were called
the Netjehu, and this word is often translated as God, even if the translation is not truly correct. In an attempt to personify these complex metaphysical ideas, people look to nature looking for animals with similar attributes to the Netjehu. So, the road opener, an ancestral god of death, Whippoorwill, was associated with jackals, who are always close to cemeteries. The furious Sekhmet was associated with lioness, and the kind Hathor with cows. Each community had his main deity that created everything, and a pantheon. But in the south, a god was gaining much popularity. A god who will change the history of the land. Horus the Falcon. Early Egyptians were not ignorant of trade. Although the land around the Nile was fertile, it was also poor on minerals. So, merchant expeditions were sent south and west, even if some of those had more military than economic objectives. This was Egypt before the Age of Kings. Many small communities with similar cultures and beliefs, but not unified. We know that there was a feeling of identification between Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, because each one had a different protecting deity. However, it is complicated to know what were the relations between those two. End of time, these small communities began to compete for land and resources, creating a period of chaos. But on those times of violence, a man would arise, not a simple tribal chief, but a king, the Scorpene King. No, not this one. Yes, this one. From where he came, his reign, and even his name are shrouded in mystery. In fact, there are even historians who claim that he was not a man, but rather a dynasty. The only evidence of his life is a club head found in the ruins of a temple. However, this relic tells us a lot. The Scorpene King appears as a giant. His size distinguishes him from other men. His nature is superior. Indeed, this will become a classic element of Egyptian art. The king will always be represented this way. The upper registers offer a parade of standards of the Scorpion armies, each with a hanged lapwing. Those birds of the marshes were originally used to refer to the people of Lower Egypt. So, the scene may be an allusion for a probable victory of the Scorpene King over the Delta. We can also find bows with hanging symbols. The 9 arcs symbolized all the powers outside Egypt. The whole upper register would, therefore, represent in an allegorical way the victory of the Scorpene King over the populations of the Delta and a certain number of outside countries. Finally, let's go back to our protagonist. Despite the military connotations of the mace, the Scorpion himself is not represented as a warrior. He carries working tools, and even if it is not known wherever he will start the construction of a temple, a city, or a sowing ceremony, the image of the worker king is another element that will be constant in Egyptian iconography. So, what is the story that can be drawn from all these elements? The Scorpene King was an ambitious lord of the south. He sent numerous military expeditions to the north and other countries. However, he did not want to be simply known as a conqueror, but as a builder. Alas, if he dreamed of unification, he failed for unknown reasons. But his ambition was not in vain. We cannot establish the borders of his kingdom, but he seemed to be very prosperous. There are even clues that indicate the existence of trade routes with Mesopotamia. It's also around this time that writing, calendars, and techniques for predicting the Nile cycles will begin to take shape. The Scorpene King was not the only ruler of this time. Others will appear before and after him, men like Horus, King Ka, who apparently created the first tax in history, Aha, among others. Alas, it is impossible to establish a chronology. However, none were as well succeeded like the Scorpion. Maybe Egypt was not yet ready to be unified. Maybe this dream was too big for one man. Or maybe the right man was not born yet.